All right, so I am going to be introducing you to Stephanie Carrigan and Carrigan, I should say, who has become a delightful dear friend. But we met when Stephanie was going through a bit of a challenge, and so I wanted her to be able to share her story because I think it might be important for others. So, Stephanie, why don't you just just first tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, where you live and what you do, and just give us a little bit of an introduction. So, Stephanie, take it away.
Okay, so I live in Northport, Maine, beautiful place, and with my husband Mike, and we have three adult children, Benjamin, Catherine, and Thomas. They're all married, have kids, and that's not quite right, is it? They don't all have kids, but we do have some grandchildren in the mix. And so that's a little bit about me.
And what were you doing when we first met, and what were you doing prior to the COVID-19 crisis?
When we first met, I was working for an agency that cared for people that were elderly or in hospice in their own homes. So I staffed um, people, tried to match them with folks so that they could be comfortable in their own home and be well cared for. And so I did that for a number of years, but it had taken a toll on my health. It's really work that involves 7 days a week. People don't pick when they're not feeling well or when they need assistance. And so it was my job to kind of help folks out, either by going myself or sending someone, and making sure that they had their needs met. And of course, as you can imagine, it's really, that can happen 7 days a week, days or nights. And I found it very rewarding work, and I loved so much about it. But it really was taking a toll on my own health, probably because I'm one to care so deeply for each and every one of them. So
We'll actually return to that period of your life, and then just more recently, you were working with.
now I'm working in a tax accounting office prior to COVID-19, and it's tax time, so we were working a lot of overtime, and then this all happened. So then
you kind of went from year-round stress to seasonal stress.
Right, that's exactly right.
So several months before we met, you had an episode, right?
I did.
And just share a little, share us a little bit about that episode and
Well, typically every spring I will have allergies, and I was stressed. I had a couple of hospice cases going, and I was not paying attention to the subtle things of rest, and I ended up having an asthma attack, which I had never had prior to then in my life. And I really didn't recognize it, and I said to my son, I think I need to go get this checked out. So he drove me down to the ER, and that's what they found out, that I was having an asthma attack. And they gave me like an albuterol treatment and some other steroids and that kind of thing. And me being me, I just went right back to work. And I didn't realize my immune system had been compromised. So I picked up pneumonia within 5 days, and that knocked me out for about 25 days. So I was probably as sick as I had ever been in my life. And I thought during that time, something needs to change. And I'm not sure really what, but I've got to pay attention. You know,
And, and,
being in my 50s, and
and
so
so, so with that episode, right, I think one of the things that you had, because of the stress and everything else, you had not really been living, very healthy and taking care of yourself. And so I think after that, you began to focus on weight as the issue. Is that right?
well, weight was in the back of my mind, and so I knew that something needed to change for that. But really, the lifestyle is to grab, fast food and go to your next appointment. And I decided that probably what I needed to do is to find a less stressful job. So that was in my mind. And I was just trying to decide how I could do that. And I ended up taking a course on, um, self-improvement and trying to decide what it really was that I wanted in life. And so, and that went for about 3 months. And then I was at a trade show and I met you. So,
And prior to that trade show, right, you had already been addressing some issues in terms of your had been getting into a more, a bit of a healthier eating pattern, right? You'd lost.
and I had lost 40 pounds, but I did find myself wavering because I was hungry a lot of the time, and um, looking for something to help me
Right.
or to assist me in my journey.
And if I remember right, you had two other issues at that time, right? One which was lack of sleep.
Right.
Mm.
I couldn't sleep, and I had high blood pressure. So my sleep was very spotty, and I would often wake up several times during the night and sometimes just get up, just give up and get up.
And you had digestive issues, is that correct?
Uh, well, what did you, I guess I'm forgetting. So what did you,
Well, I think if I remember right, it was something, you had so one part of the things that kept you up at night, was, a little bit of a, what we call IBS or irritable bowel
oh
syndrome.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That was a big part of my life at that time. I was, and really had been that way since high school.
Yeah.
I, I had to get up pretty early so that I could go to work.
So when you met me, we kind of, talked a little bit about, Shackley, and we talked about, really you were sort of keen on the healthy weight
Right.
products, which were, a combination of shake and meal bars and multivitamin.
Yes.
And so we started you on that. And tell tell us a little bit about what happened within the first few days of being on the protein shake. And I think we also had the multivitamin in there as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I was on the strip and shake,
mhm.
and also uh, well, just to initially that first 4 days of doing that, it was like walking through a veil, like the fog lifted, and I didn't even know I was foggy. That's, and then I also felt just a feeling of well-being, and I started sleeping through the night better. Within the first week or two, that started to shift for me. And so that was the first, um, I was like, wow, this really works. Um, and of course, I took off some weight that first week, but that wasn't the real thing. The real thing was like, I just felt like I was shift. I was just I, all cylinders were go, I just
So
felt like
you have,
everything,
you have more energy.
more energy, a feeling of well-being, a feeling of there was hope.
Mm.
Um, so all those things.
And so you were getting better sleep, and I think within about a week or so, the things with like the irritable bowel syndrome began to clear up, right?
Yeah,
First
that
time.
was within a week. Um, yeah, I think even within that 4 days, I started not having continuous diarrhea. So, you know, that that's a big deal if you've
Right.
dealt with that your whole life. So,
So 4 days, right? Your whole life, right?
yeah,
And in four
4 days.
days,
That's right.
right?
Right.
So, and you were, I think, on the time on blood pressure medication, right?
I was
Right. And now,
on two types
okay.
of blood pressure medication.
And
And
how many types of medication are you on now?
zero.
Okay. And how long did it take to come off that medication after you started using that? You're getting a healthy, start to the day with the protein.
I
And
think within the first 2 months, I dropped one medication, and within 6 months, I gave up the second one.
it's
So
great.
it was pretty
So,
quick.
so inquiring minds want to know, right? Here we are, a few years later. How, what's your total weight loss now?
90 pounds.
Right,
90
90
pounds.
pounds. It's
And I have
amazing.
some way to go. I have a little bit more to go, but I'll get there, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Well, I think one of the things that you addressed, right, was making a big, changing course of direction. And that was one of the very first things you did was make a mental change, right? You decided to
yeah,
get healthy.
yes.
So, um, so what would you say has been kind of when you think back to those changes? What do you think are some of the things that are really key about being on that nutrition? What would you say has been sort of like if you put the highlights on it? What's it done?
Well, I feel as though it basically healed my gut. And that's where I was having a lot of trouble with I had a lot of joint issues, a lot of pain. But what I notice as time goes on, I'm not having, like, I'm going through this spring and not having any problems with allergies at all. I'm also just my overall health has gotten better and better. And through Shackley, I've met people that are also like minded. And so I ended up each each quarter or each I just seem to get on a better path to health, and that is supported, and I feel as though people are in my corner and they actually get what I'm talking about, and um, there's help for that, and I feel it, supported. So So now I'm eating better than I've ever been in my life, and I'm exercising every single day. And I've, it didn't happen overnight, but it's happened with consistently, I'm heading for my goal.
And how is if you think about what your outlook back then and your outlook now, how would you compare the two?
I thought maybe when I was sitting with pneumonia, I thought perhaps I might not even, like my parents died before they ever retired, and I thought I was on the same path. And now I don't believe that. I believe I have a lot of control of what I put in my body and the health I'm going to get in return for that. So it it I'm I was hopeless, and now I'm full of hope. and I'm looking forward to the continuing adventure.
Well, it's a great story, Steph. I always love hearing your story, and I think the really cool thing is now you decided to become a Shakti distributor,
Yes,
and now because of your story, you've helped both your daughter and your daughter-in-law and other people around you start to experience some of the same change, a change, right?
that's
In health, necessarily the same, but you're bringing other people in. And I think your story is really an important one because we know we've got a lot of changes out there across the US. And I think also, I think, this also goes across to Mike, your husband, right? He's off of some
yes.
medications, right?
He's off all his cholesterol medication, and he's still working on some others, but I know that for him, the cholesterol medication, he's very concerned about the long-term health effects. They have some side effects, and he's just, I mean, his doctor is just as pleased can be. So, and the thing about Mike is he's got this healthy cholesterol numbers, and he's like third generation of people having high cholesterol numbers. So for him to be like being able to get off that was really, really cool for him. And he's also changing his eating. So I think all of them will be gone soon. Yeah.
Well, Steph, I want to thank you for this because it's a really important story, and that's what we do, right? We share stories and
That's right.
Shakti and get people connected that way. And I just really want to thank you for making that choice that day to come over to the table.
Well,
And
I thank you for asking, because had you not asked,
uh,
you know, I don't know. I don't know. But now it's just happiness. So thank you.
well, appreciate it, Steph. All right. Well, great story. We'll share this with the world. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.